Psalm 83, again attributed to Asaph or Asaph's priestly lineage. Although the exact historical setting of this psalm is uncertain, some commentators suggest it could be the Battle of Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles 20, might be the least objectionable, although still it's not very certain. The time of David is often argued as too soon, while the Babylonian exile is considered far too late. So the proper setting is likely a prophetic reiteration of Psalm 2 under the shadow, a growing shadow, of Assyrian threat, as the threat of Assyria was increasing but had not yet invaded. So here, the psalmist prays for deliverance from escalating anti-Semitism that will crescendo during the final tribulation, which the coming of the Messiah will ultimately answer and just settle that issue once and for all. So let's jump into a few verses here in Psalm 83. Oh God, do not keep silent. I hate to pause right there because we got to talk about God's silence. God's silence represents the restraint of his power to deliver, or it's the allowance of escalating wickedness. Biblical prophets often characterize the rebellion period that precedes the tribulation as the time when God's silence allows wickedness to escalate. It's really it's like a figurative silence that allows humanity's capacity for sin to reach its culminations. In Isaiah 18, Isaiah said, "The Lord said to me, I will quietly watch from my dwelling, but my gaze will be like the clear heat of the sun and like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest." There's this, even though it seems like he's absent, no, his eyes and his gaze and the pressure of his gaze are growing and inescapable, like the heat of the sun during harvest. So here's this prayer: don't keep silent. God, break your silence. Don't hold your peace or be still. Why? Well, because, for behold, your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you have raised their heads. This is the wicked confederation of Psalm 2, those who have set themselves against the Lord to oppose his covenant and destroy the people of his covenant that are both Israel but also Gentiles who are loyal to the covenants of God. For behold, your enemies are making an uproar. Those who hate you have raised their head. They've lifted their horn, like we talked about in that previous psalm. They lay crafty plans against your people. They consult together against your treasured ones. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation. And this is revealing. Like, you've got to understand, what is the extent of their wicked intentions? It is to fully annihilate the people of God as a nation, as a people, to erase them from the planet. It's a brutal purpose for which they've come together. The wicked nations have created a sort of anti-covenant that vow to commit really a genocide against the Jewish nation specifically. And this is what we see in Psalm chapter 2. This is what we see here in Psalm 83. Come, let us wipe them out as a nation. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more. They're going to remove it, even the posterity of it, from the land. Now, we've seen how the Lord has promised to remove some, to wipe some wicked nations and their remembrance from the face of the earth, but that's because this is their commitment that they've made against the people of God. For they conspire with one accord. Against you, they make a covenant, a sort of anti-covenant. And then he goes on to list 10 peoples. And this list of 10 that I've highlighted here in red, I don't know. This is interesting because I go through and I'm reading the commentaries. I'm looking what scholars say. As the psalmist lists 10 groups and city-states, these are historical representations of this adversarial posture, this intention to stand against God's people and his covenant. So this is probably more like a cumulative list, since there's no historical event that has ever included all of these groups together at one time. This has not happened in history that we can see. And it may be a foreshadowing of the future, which I think prophetically this definitely would apply. And these would then be representative of that wicked confederation at the end of the age. Not to say that these specifically are them, But really what's happening is the psalmist is kind of looking back historically and saying, like these, like them, like those, like them, like add them all together and mix them into a pot. And here's what you get in this wicked confederation at the end of the age. I don't think that these are specifically supposed to be identifiers for specifically who or where those people are, although I think there probably are inclusions. And so I've actually got a map that I'm going to attach with the notes when I upload these recordings. I have a map where I've plotted out, here's Edom, here's where the Ishmaelites dwelled, and Moab, and Tyre, and Philistia, and Asher. When it says Asher has also joined them, the Asher was representing Assyria. And I've actually got a little circle way up in the Assyrian territory where Asher had joined the fray, essentially. They are the strong arm of the children of Lot. So that's where we definitely get the reference to Assyria. That helps us in our timing of when this was. But anyway, you can look at that map. They create kind of an inner circle around Israel, like very tight, close around Israel. And then you have Assyria kind of out as the outlier far away. All that to say, they are representative of this wicked confederation at the end of the age that were historical representations at that time. So here's the prayer. Do to them as you did to Midian, just as the psalmist has gone back and named adversarial nations throughout history. Now he's going to name times when the Lord has delivered them in previous historical settings. The story of Gideon, the story of Deborah, Judges 4 and 5 and 6 through 8 are some of the historical settings that are referenced here. And I've included some of those references in the notes. The psalmist is praying for Israel's deliverance in that day and their final deliverance based on God's past history of delivering his people. But ultimately, this culminates in the final defeat of all these adversarial nations at the end of the age and the establishment of the Messianic age. These are all the ones who have said, let us take possession for ourselves of the pastures of God. They want to totally remove the people from the land, claim it for themselves, but instead there's this prayer for final deliverance, for permanent peace, and those are the promises that are being referenced here. Oh God, make them like the whirling dust, like chaff before the wind. Imagine this. You're thinking of those who oppose God's purposes in his covenant, both in the ultimate sense, but think about it even in your own life. What this means to the purposes of God, for anybody who opposes your purposes in my life. It's like, please remove these obstacles is really what the prayer is. God, make them like the whirling dust, like chaff before wind, where their efforts just blow away effortlessly, just whoosh, taken away with the wind. As fire consumes the forest, as a flame is set in the mountain, as the flame sets the mountains ablaze, so may you pursue them with your tempest and terrify them with your hurricane. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek the name of the Lord. Okay, before I get to that, I just want to do a couple of cross-references. Quickly, when we come to the whirling dust and the fire that consumes, and then the tempest and hurricane, there are some direct cross-references for this to Isaiah. I've put them in the notes. Isaiah 17, verse 13, the nations roar like the roaring of many waters, but God will rebuke them and they will flee away. Chased like chaff on the mountains before the wind, like whirling dust before the storm. You see how it's such a direct parallel, how it really seems like these go together? Probably written in very similar time frames. Isaiah 29, starting in verse 5, but the multitude of your foreign foes shall be like the small dust, and the multitude of the ruthless like passing chaff. And in an instant, suddenly, they disappear. That goes on in Isaiah 29 to describe more deliverance. Isaiah 9, for wickedness burns like fire. It consumes briars and thorns. It kindles the thickets of the forest, and they roll upward in a column of smoke. Or Saul, he goes on in chapter 10, Isaiah 10, 17, and the light of Israel will become a fire, the Holy One a flame, and it will burn and devour his thorns and briars in one day. A sudden and comprehensive deliverance. In Isaiah 29, again, you will be visited by the Lord of hosts, with thunder, and with earthquake, and with great noise, a whirling tempest, and a flame and devouring fire. And all that tempest is a deliverance that comes to do away with those who oppose God's covenant and his purposes for the restoration of the world. Then we've got, fill their faces with shame that they may seek your name. This is neat. I mean, this is kind of a God, even that those who are among them, would you fill those who are standing against your covenant with shame, so that the redeemed who are among the nations who are there, who are out there, so that among those nations they would seek your face. This is a prayer for the Great Commission. It's a prayer that anybody who opposes the gospel and God's covenants being established would be done away with in the nations around the world, to remove any hindrance to people seeking God's face. Let them be put to shame and dismay, that they may perish in disgrace, that they may know that you alone, whose name is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth. This is really a prayer for every hindrance to the Great Commission to be removed, to be taken out of the way, so that everybody among the nations of the earth can seek your name and know that God alone, whose name is the Lord, and of course the Lord in our Bibles is the placeholder for Yahweh, are the Most High over all the earth. It's an awesome prayer for the salvation of the nations. But again, it's got to happen in the context of deliverance, because all of those who oppose that narrative, that redemptive narrative, have actually got to be removed out of the way. And that's part of the unique design of the end of the age. As those circumstances unfold, it is the optimum design to get all of the hindrances out of the way and get the gospel to the ends of the earth in the greatest measure, to the greatest redemptive degree. Anyway, I love that. Okay, that's going to do it for Psalm 83.